Labas, I'm Mangirdas. I'm a software engineer from Lithuania. I'm really glad that you joined this talk because this will be a pretty lightweight one. It would be like a nice transition from the keynote to the actual, very hardcore conference that we usually do and we usually have in Fluttercon. So bear with me. About the talk itself. So I've been using Flutter for more than 6 years actually, and I'm talking about Flutter for more than half of that, I would say. And usually I talk about technical stuff and I get a bit bored of it. And I wanted to make some kind of light talk about stuff that I did wrong in my past, but those little parts that eventually come out pretty nice. And yeah, this talk is like, the main expectation of this talk is like to get you inspired or to embrace you to find unconventional ways to solve problems. And I think the main idea for this talk came up when I saw just another post on LinkedIn about unicorn developers and how good they are or how fascinating they are as engineers. And when you think about it, unicorn developers are good at providing beautiful, like they have design skills, they can provide beautiful AIs. They also somehow manage to transfer those designs to a very high quality, maintainable, readable, scalable code, and whatnot. But when you think about this position as a unicorn developer, that does not really scale. Like it's still a single person doing everything. So if a unicorn developer chooses, to ship faster, it needs some sacrifices to make. For instance, if you sacrifice a high quality code, it hits your engineer pride in code quality. So you need to take alternatives. You can sacrifice beautiful parts of your app, but then what's the point of being a unicorn developer if you cannot really design it anymore, right? And after all, we are at the same point in the beginning. And yeah, that's the thing. Like, in my opinion, unicorn developers do not scale that well. So I try to think of other ways or alternatives, not necessarily the opposite of unicorn developers, but what type of developers could be the most effective in our day-to-day world. So I think a concept of cat-like developers, when cats do like the least possible thing to get the biggest result at the end. So like doing 2 meow meows and getting a huge piece of salmon or something. So I think that could be applied to our developer world. And I call that LDD, or laziness-driven development, trademarked, that's mine. So laziness, like the main point of laziness-driven development is that you put the least amount of effort to reach the maximum goal. And actually this goal is all about like, what's the least I could do to at least make users happy, to improve the app quality, and all of those details. So when we get back to those qualities of the app with LDD, you can actually achieve all of these at once, but that comes at a price. And so this talk is like discussing those prices and all the drawbacks or those considerations that you should do to achieve something. And we'll start with building beautiful UIs that you as a developer cannot really change. What I mean, we'll get to there, but just have this somewhere at the back of your head. First of all, for those who are like newly coming for Flutter, so let's say, okay, let's do a little warm up. So who are using Flutter for less than 2 years, let's say? Okay, a little bit less than half, but there's a significant amount of people there. So when you come to Flutter, usually what you're looking for is, an easier ways of how to build beautiful UIs, how to implement motion design principles, and how to just make your app outstanding from the design point of view. And if you're not using any of Grant Skinner team's packages, like Flutter Animate, Flutter Custom Carousel, and anything like that, you are probably missing out, because those packages really enables you as a developer to focus on the motion design part, but they like wrap and abstract the code around, handling all the animation controllers, all the synchronization between different animations and whatnot. So a quick demo of that is that there's like one of their showcase app that is built using the Flutter Custom Carousel. So let's say if you want to have like a fancy deck, different types of carousels. So instead of having a list, you can have a stack that changes in a way. So you could have that. Also, let's say you are building a bank application or some finance application. So you could check like what are your debit cards available. And also at the bottom, you could see that the staggered animation is happening. So that's implemented using Flutter Animate, and it does all the synchronization for you. So just a quick note, if you are not using Grand Skinner packages, you are missing out. But the problem is your designer usually spends some time to implement those design in Figma, in whatever paint. I don't know what designers are using. But then actually you are doing the same thing. So you are converting the same specific design and you're doing it just in a different language. So designer has a designer language, we have code, right? So we need to transfer the same design into code. Of course, if you're a Unicorn developer, then you need to do both of these, but it takes a little bit more time, right? But is there a better way? Like, is there a way that we can just avoid writing code, or at least writing a little bit of code to achieve the same result? So the goal is that, designer basically does all the dirty job for us, and we are just there, sleeping, enjoying our lives, and maybe just transferring those designs and injecting them into the app. And that's actually possible. Who has heard about a thing called Rive? Yeah, that's more than the newcomers to Flutter we have there. So for those who don't know, Rive is a motion. I think they call themselves like motion design tool, which is also implemented. The whole UI is implemented in Flutter, by the way. And the main purpose of Rive animation, so it's similar to low-T animations, if you have never heard about Rive. So you have animations, but the outstanding thing about Rive is that those animations have states. So meaning there are state machines, so you could basically have stateful animations, you could change them, you could trigger state transitions, and you have various triggers, inputs that you could handle outside of those animations. So basically you could control the animation from your app and send it to design. So there will be several examples. So let's say the very minimalistic example that you could think of is just a static design, right? So let's say you have a static web page, you have a portfolio page, you have some kind of showcase. And by the way, this page is created by Ross. He's like my favorite Rive animator that exists, and he's a very nice guy. So if you write him, he sends you a lot of examples. He talks about Rive like very passionately. So I would recommend checking his work out. So yeah, so he has like, static website, which is his portfolio, but also this website has a trigger. It has a width of the whole page, and you can control it from outside. So let's say if we are in desktop view, we have this. Then if we make it a little bit smaller, we see the transition to tablet, like it gets a little bit smaller. If we move to mobile, like it gets stacked. On the right, there's like zero Flutter code. It's purely implemented in Rive, so you do not need to do anything. So yeah, so that's the demo. That's the state transitions between different widths of the view. And if you look at the code, so this code is basically pretty well documented in Rive, like it's like a Rive package that you should use in Flutter. But the main idea, that you see on the left is that you take the Rive asset, like any other asset in your app, like imagine that's an image, just that moves basically. So you take the asset, then you then you select the artboard of it. So artboard is basically the visible view inside this design. So if in Figma there's a frame, so it's something like that. So you select the artboard, then you select the specific state machine that you want to use. So that's defined in the Rive file, and then you connect the controller to control this animation. So in our case, we are controlling the width. So meaning we can control how wide is the view, and based on that, you see all the state changes in the example. Then you may think, okay, so that's pretty simple example, but how about game development in Flutter? So how about game development in Rive? So the game development, like by the essence, is pretty complicated, because usually people need, to have some kind of game engine, because you need to handle assets, you need to handle physics, like you need to have gravity, you need to detect the collisions between elements. So game development is like a full different story, I would say, especially in Flutter. But actually, the app that you see on the left is implemented in 12 lines on the right. So all we do, like designer does all the dirty work for us. We just put this file into there and it's working. So let me check if I can hit my high score. Yay, okay, I'm bad at this game. Yeah, but the game is working, and actually it takes like several lines of code to make it work. So yeah, so that's the magic behind Rive. And lastly, if you really like this idea of injecting like the full designs into your app, there's a new project emerging. I would say it's still new. It's more of a use case rather than the framework, but it's called Expression UI, and it's created by Dane, which is who is also a Flutter and Dart Google developer expert from South Africa, I would say. And he's creating Expression UI. So let's say he has this idea that, okay, I can define all the screens, I can define all the elements in Rive like as assets, and then I can generate code that makes it like work in our app. So let's say you could define different views, the different artboards, and then you can map the triggers, that, let's say, the navigation. You can define the navigation, right? You can define like the responsiveness of the view. Also, it supports like scrollable views, which is also pretty challenging thing to implement in Rive, honestly. And yeah, it also supports composable views. So basically, you could have like different Rive assets and use it in your app. And the code is basically generated for you. So you just put it in the app, and everything just works. So that's about building UI that you cannot change. So that was the meaning. Like, designer does all the work for you, but the drawback that you should accept if you want to change anything there, you need to ask the designer to change it. Like, as a developer, as a Flutter developer, probably you cannot really change that much there. And I think this whole section could be summarized like, if it works, just don't touch it. It's like the golden #1 rule in the whole programming world. Just if the designer implements everything, maybe give a second thought and just put everything there right into the app. Let's talk about high quality code, but it doesn't really work all the time. Yes, I'm one of those persons who will talk about state management in this conference. It's a short section, but I think differently from what we hear about state management, like even in the keynote, like they were talking about like what are the different solutions, or what solution of state management we should choose in our apps, like because to define the architecture or something like that. But my approach was like getting to the roots of like state management and what it is by the essence. So what I mean, like, in any state management solution, basically you have triggers, you have button clicks or whatnot. That's called, event in essence. And then you, when there's a trigger, you change the state to the intermediate one. Like say you want to show a loader. So, for the user, the screen shouldn't be like frozen or not. Something is happening. So you want to show the loader. So you want to put the state into progress. Then you are sending some kind of request to API or to run any business logic. And based on that, you show either success state, like you change the state to the another one, or there's an error, you just notify the user. So how many people are handling their state this way? Like at least did something like that. Cool. Like, yeah, more than a half of the room. Yeah, and actually that's how it works, because usually we do not know what will come back from the response. So yeah. That's like the normal thing to do and the smart thing to do, I would say. But actually, the more you think about this, the funnier it gets, because companies are investing thousands, I would say even $1 million to their infrastructure, like to make it scalable, make it accessible, and they basically ensures that your backend will be reached at any point in your life, pretty much with a downtime of several seconds. But we still do not trust them, and we still put the intermediate states. We still show the loaders, even though that we know that like 90% of time that would be a success after all, right? So, is there another way how we can manage state and do not show loaders? So the approach is called, I don't know if that's official name, but that's an optimistic state management approach. So what you do is that you basically remove the in progress or intermediate state, and you ship the expected state to the beginning of your flow. So let's take YouTube, for example. So you are clicking the subscribe button, the button changes to subscribed. You press the, let's say, thumbs up button, it changes to thumbs up. You write a comment, the comment appears at the top. So most of the times, when you think about it, you actually know what will be the end result or what will be the successful state in your state management. So we are just shifting this to the beginning, meaning we do not need to show any loader. But after that, let's say in the background, we are still sending the API request because we need to do that, right? We need to change it in our servers. But in case there's success, we actually do not need to update the UI at all because it's already there. We already put the expected state there. The only difference and drawback, I would say, is that if something goes wrong, then we need to take care of the state and we need to revert it back, which is sometimes ugly, but it is what it is. That's the drawback that you should accept. Talking about demos, so on the left, you see the basic, the default state management solution. So you press a button, it gets disabled, not to, over-click on it, and after you get a successful response, you show the animation. With optimistic state management solution, you can show the animation right away because you know that that's the next state, and after that you are sending the request. So the request is sent in the background, and I think that makes sense. And you see it is not blocked anymore. Like instead showing loader, I can immediately press the button. So that's the UX improvement that you get from the optimistic state management solution. By looking at the more, let's say more complex example, to-do app. I don't know how complex is that, but yeah, that's a to-do app. I think I put the delay for 700 milliseconds, which is a bit long response time, but in some countries, that's the default, actually, how the app operates. So let's say with basic state management solution, if you do any action, you see that after the click, there's some delay until something pops out. Or let's say you want to delete an item, it just takes some time to do that. With optimistic state management approach, like it's snappy, like it works right away, and it really looks good, like, for developers, and not for developers, sorry, for the users to use your app because it's responsive. And I say the ugly part, let's say you are getting offline or something goes wrong. So with basic state management solution, you see that, you first validate whether you get a successful response, and only that, you get your state at least not corrupted. With optimistic state management approach, however, the state changes, but it needs to be reverted. You see that I click the item, it gets back to the initial state. If I delete it appears again. And if you ruin the app like very much, you try to struggle, it ends up in a very inconsistent state, and you need to take care of a lot of stuff. But at least, that's the price that sometimes you can pay in order to improve the UX. By looking at the code for this specific example is on the left again, the basic approach. So let's say we have a remove operation. We purely rely on what's the response from the server. So we just send a request, we get a response, we put it as a state. That's the source of truth for our state. On the optimistic approach, however, we need to handle it at the UI level pretty much. We need to remove it manually and only then send the request to the servers. And if something goes wrong, we just revert it back. So that's why we keep the previous item state in the very beginning of our method, just to do that. And actually, this state management approach is so common, is that React is bringing it to their framework. So use optimistic hook is already, I think that development is already finished. You can already use it in master channel, but it just shows and proves that this idea is valid, but it has the drawbacks that I just talked to you about. So just have this in mind. Yeah, and I think the main idea behind this is that if you want to improve the UX, that's a very small detail that you could change in your state management. But if being roughly right enough for your case, maybe that could improve the user experience for 99% of your users. So just have this in mind, and maybe it would help to improve the app overall. And getting to the last section is about fast product development. It's about how to ship your apps faster and how to be more efficient about developing overall. So I'm working in a startup, and I have worked at companies where we had very passionate managers, let's say. So they think of ideas, that should be implemented now, and even better, they should be implemented yesterday, right? So they bring with those ideas, and then as a very natural reaction from a software engineer is that, is this like that, like developing, is it really the cheapest way to validate this idea? Maybe there are other options on how we can prove whether users will use it or not, whether it bring more revenue to the company or not. And of course, there are more ways and a lot of ways actually how we can validate without coding, because coding, writing code, shipping code is like the most expensive thing that you could do. Like if you can validate your ideas before that, that's like how you should roll, in my opinion. And I think we can discuss it otherwise. And one of the things that we do a lot, at least in our company, is doing fake door testing. It's basically when you ship the feature to your users, but this feature is not implemented yet. Like you see the button, you see some kind of feature that is there on the screen, but once the user clicks on it, nothing really happens. Maybe only the thank you note would say that, okay, we are working on this, but thank you for your feedback. So the main idea of this fake door approach is that you do not really spend time implementing the features, but you are collecting feedback, you're collecting analytics, so you could make better decisions whether this feature should actually be implemented or not. And I really like the slide because that's like a really nice crossover from the keynote, and that's a coincidence, or maybe, I don't know, Andrew copied it from me because those slides are available. So product development in the essence is like throwing a ball of spaghetti to the wall, and only some of them will stick to the wall, meaning we, at least in our startup, we agreed that only 1 out of 10 ideas will work, and that's very natural. Like the rest of time that you spend may not work, and that's really okay. So if you have this concept in your head, then is there really a big difference between shipping the real production-ready feature and having a fake door if that does not bring you any revenue after all? So in our case, we validate our ideas not only with fake doors, but in this case, we'll discuss the fake door testing. So yeah, if that works to validate idea, why not? And also, we by implementing fake doors, we implement them together with feature flags. So meaning once we collect enough feedback from our users, we basically turn the feature flag on and off. Okay, I think I should have mentioned. So feature flags are like remote Boolean flags that you could change over the air. So meaning you do not need to redeploy your app to change the code behind a feature. So you could like remotely control it. So that's why it's good for hiding sections in your app, like enabling and disabling features for a particular group or for all the users. So yeah, so fake doors is also like a good case, for feature flags, because once you collect enough information, it's better to hide this fake door because it's really frustrating for the users, even though, you only collect feedback, but yeah, that's not the best UX practice. So hiding it makes more sense. And this feature flagging, for feature flagging specifically, we are using Firebase remote config, first of all, because it's free, and also it scales pretty well. Like you could have a lot of properties, you could have a lot of feature flags and other not related properties, but you can easily transfer them to the app like over the air. So we are using Firebase remote config for that. So I don't know if you noticed, but these slides are implemented in Flutter. And one of the most requested features like for the framework of this is that, we need to export these slides to PDF because we need to print them out. I don't know who's doing that, but that's actually the request. And I'm very skeptical, even though I heard this feedback from some people, but I'm very skeptical whether that's actually used. So I added a fake door for it. So let's say when you press the button, of course, it's not implemented. Like I'm lazy, like LDD, remember, trademark. So when you press the export to PDF, I'm just saying, okay, thank you for your interest. And maybe we are working on this. Okay, it's set that it's still in development. Yeah, right. So, but this button, what it actually does is you could see on the right, it actually sends an event to Firebase Analytics. You could, of course, you could use any analytics service that you're using. So you're collecting feedback. And once you get enough feedback from your users, then you can at least make a better decision whether this feature should be implemented or not. So that's the whole usage of fake doors. And yeah, we are pretty good on time. So a little bonus story. So this story, how to say it from legal perspective, it may or may not have happened, but that's how you could use some creative ways to ship your apps faster. So For those who are following me on social media, I have this little section on Twitter, on X, sorry, where I just post how long does it took the last time I published the app update, and it varies, like it from minutes to 2 weeks. I think I had a month even for one app, but it happened before the series that started. So yeah, that's a tough relationship to be in, honestly. And in one of the releases, actually, we get some feedback from Apple. We allegedly had some feedback from Apple saying that, okay, your sign in with Apple guidelines are really off, like you're not prefilling the information that you get from our services. So what does that mean? So since we allegedly publish an app on 2 platforms, like on iPhone and iPad, so meaning the same reviewer does the review twice. And the first time when you're calling the Apple services with your account, you get the full response with your ID, authentication ID, but also you get some extra info like first name, last name. So then on the left, you can see that we can pre-fill this in the form. But if you do it the second time, like if you drop off from the sign-up form, you didn't finish it, so meaning we still do not have your data in our database. So if you try to log in the second time, actually this information is not pre-filled anymore because that's how it works, and that's why we got rejected. Like our update got rejected, and that's actually how it works by design. So that's an official answer from the framework engineer at Apple. It says that we return this info for the first time, but if you try to get it the second time, you need to take care of all the persistence yourself. So that's basically how it works. And then, since we have some data about our app, we allegedly checked the sessions that are run by the Apple reviewers, like where they drop off, like what's the maximum path in the app that they reach. Apparently, they didn't really go any further than the sign-up screen. Like they always drop off a sign-up screen. And I said, okay, if you do not really go further, that means that your information isn't really used anymore in the app, right? I think you can see where this is going. So yeah, can we maybe hide those fields? And if there's nothing to pre-fill, then there's no problem, right? So how it works is that on Firebase Remote Config, you can also create conditions. So specific condition when your feature flag becomes true or false. Not feature flag specifically, but we'll use for feature flagging. So I created a condition for the next app release. So meaning if the current app version is higher than the latest one, which means this is the one that app reviewer has on his device, return this feature flag true. So how it looks like. So we ship the app to app reviews. Like you see the first name, last name, not pre-filled because we haven't really fixed this bug. But when this app is at the hands of an app reviewer, those fields are not visible anymore. So you could technically, there's no problem anymore. We are waiting for review until it happens. We get okay, it is accepted, right? And then once the app is finished, those fields appear back again. We allegedly did this just to save time and just because that was very frustrating. I think our backend team was pretty busy at that moment, and we do not really want to we didn't have time just to persist the value because we had more important features to ship. So temporarily, we allegedly did this for 2 or 3 releases until we just fixed the bug properly, and it's not there anymore. But the main idea, I do not recommend doing this. Trust me, trust my word. You could technically get banned from App Store for doing this. It's shipping a calculator with code push, and then instead of a calculator, you're shipping the whole completely new app. That's also the case in the industry. But it just shows, how you can use the same tooling, how you could use the same techniques to be a little bit more creative, to maybe sometimes save some time, and yeah, that will allow you to ship your apps faster. So. I think the summary of this section and basically the whole presentation is that just give a second thought before programming anything. Like if you can ship faster by injecting the design into your app, if you can use some like packages or whatnot. Yeah, the slide is not important, don't worry. So yeah, if you can do it faster, just do it, and that should be fine. So these slides are Flutter slides. These are already deployed on my blog. It's on kazlauskas.dev/LDD, trademarked. So just check them out at your own pace. And I think that was pretty good transition from keynote to the remaining conference. I feel it was a bit lightweight talk, but I just want for you to be curious and to take the most out of the conference, because conference is not about learning something new, but it's about learning what could be learned actually, and meeting other people and get inspired. So thank you for being there.